Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Libya's tanker crisis is brought to an end when the renegade Morning Glory and its contraband cargo of crude is seized by US Navy SEALs. This as several soldiers are killed in a Benghazi car bombing. Also, Nigeria's Interior Minister rejects calls for his resignation over a fatal stadium stampede, and representatives from across the nation gather in Abuja for a national conference on the challenges faced by the country. And a Cameroonian singer forced out from his homeland after using his music to criticize President Paul Biya dies in exile in the United States. Lipira Dimambanga's song Constipated Constitution won him 3 years in prison. First up, the ship that launched the end of the career of Libya's former prime minister has been returned to the government. US Navy SEALs carried out a bloodless raid of the Morning Glory tanker off the Cypriot coast. Laden with thousands of litres of state crude that militia had been trying to sell last week, the vessel managed to slip past government forces and escape out to sea. It became a symbol of the weakness of the central authorities and triggered the ousting of Prime Minister Ali Zidane. Julia Seeger has more.
In front of the military academy in Benghazi lies a 1-meter-deep crater. Car parts and scraps of military uniforms are scattered around the scene of the blast.
Around 11 o'clock this morning, we heard a loud explosion. So we rushed out here to see what had happened. A car had exploded and 10 others were on fire.
The attack comes just hours after American Navy SEALs took over a North Korean flagged tanker that had been loaded with an estimated $20 million cargo of crude oil at the rebel-held port of Es-Sider. The operation took place after Libya failed to prevent the tanker from leaving the country a week ago. According to the U.S. Navy, the tanker was loaded by anti-government Islamist rebels from eastern Libya, who are asking for more autonomy and a greater share of the oil wealth. The incident shed light on the weakness of the central government and prompted the parliament to vote the prime minister out of office. The standoff over control of the country's oil is only part of the greater turmoil that has engulfed Libya since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi 3 years ago. The government is still struggling to control the entire eastern part of the country, which is effectively ruled by a patchwork of local militias.
A gun expert questioned by prosecutors in Oscar Pistorius' murder trial today told the South African court that the Olympian had agreed to buy several new guns from him, but Pistorius cancelled the order after shooting his girlfriend dead last Valentine's Day. Sean Renz said that the runner was a keen firearms enthusiast who, when tested, knew the circumstances under which one is allowed to open fire on an intruder. Prosecutors were trying to show that Pistorius flouted regulations when he fatally shot Reva Steenkamp. The runner denies murder and says he fired because he mistook her for an intruder. Protesters in the city of Kaduna on Monday demanded the resignation of the Nigerian Interior Minister, Abba Moro, over the deaths of at least 7 job seekers in a stampede over the weekend. Some reports put the death toll as high as 20 people killed when tens of thousands turned up for a recruitment test at the National Stadium in Abuja. Moro's accepted responsibility as only one entrance was opened at the packed site, but refused to resign. He's been strongly criticised for blaming the chaos on the behaviour of the applicants and for saying the money hopefuls paid to take the test would not be refunded. Well, Tolu Ogunlesi's in Lagos. He tells us more about critics' calls for Moro to step down.
Before calls for him to step down, I think it's only fair to investigate the matter, and find out the exact extent of his involvement, and there are lots of questions to be asked about this fiasco, and I think that after the question, he should be given a chance to answer the questions, but I suspect that he's not going to come out smelling very good, after the questions.
Now, the sheer number of people who turned out shows how many are desperate for work. Today, President Goodluck Jonathan opened a national conference on the biggest problems facing Nigeria. Employment and security will no doubt be top of the lists of concerns, but many people are actually really skeptical about how much will come out of this conference. Why is that?
Well, that's because a lot of Nigeria's problems actually are not problems that you need a national conference to solve. You need decisive presidential action. You need decisive action at state government level. And I think that the most challenging problems, you actually don't need to gather, you don't need to call a conference to solve them. And that's what I think. I suspect that a lot of people also know that and think that this conference may just be a way to just buy time or distract Nigerians from the issues that matter the most.
Ogunlesi there speaking to us a little earlier on. Meanwhile, Nigeria's elite's been accused of turning a blind eye to inter-ethnic conflict in the centre of the country and their fears that Islamist insurgents operating in the northeast may try to stoke clashes that have left hundreds dead around the volatile central belt over the past year. At least 100 people were hacked and burned to death in several villages in Kaduna state. In violence, it's been blamed on Muslim Fulani herdsmen targeting Christian settled communities. Disputes between the two sides date back decades. Somali extremist group Al-Shabaab claims to have killed 7 people by bombing a convoy of the African Union's AMISOM force on Monday. The bodies still not confirmed that there were any casualties, but witnesses say a suicide bomber rammed a car into the convoy on the road linking Mogadishu with the town of Afgoye. Islamist militants have upped attacks in the capital this year, with government and AU troops often being the ones targeted. Well, a year on since a French-led military offensive succeeded in turning around an Islamist militant invasion in northern Mali, and authorities are busy moving forward from the days of the conflict. Along with the violence and political disruption, there was also cultural vandalism, and the UN's working with Bamako to do what it can to heal those scars.
600 years of history wiped out after Ansar-Dine jihadists destroyed tombs at the foot of the Djinguereber Mosque in Timbuktu. The iconic El Farouk monument at the entrance of the city and the cemetery of the 3 saints met the same fate. Jihadists smashed 14 of Timbuktu's 16 mausoleums when they occupied the city, an incalculable loss to world heritage. But hopefully they're not gone forever.
We will rebuild the mausoleums, restore the mosques in Gao and in Timbuktu, and the manuscript libraries. We estimate it will take us 4 years.
The manuscripts of Timbuktu, another treasure targeted by occupying forces as they fled, they burned thousands. But 350,000 of the precious documents were smuggled to safety in Bamako. They'll soon return to Timbuktu.
We saw the destruction, and now we're seeing the reconstruction. This is really a great day. It's a renaissance for Timbuktu.
The city has long been renowned as a centre of learning. That spirit is one thing Ansar-Dine could not destroy.
A Cameroonian singer known for his fierce criticism of President Paul Biya has died in exile in the US. Lampira Dembanga was 56 when he succumbed to cancer on Sunday.
The news of the death of Cameroonian singer Lampira Dembanga spread like wildfire in the town of the same name where he was born 57 years ago. The 60,000 residents of Mbanga, located 80 kilometers from Douala, are in mourning. His family members gathered at the singer's house. They're in a state of despair. What are we going to do now? He was the only one in the family who helped us. There's no one left to help us now. Lampira Dembanga began his musical career in 1978, but it was not till the mid-80s that the artist truly conquered the hearts of Cameroonians. This was due largely to his political views, which he expressed in his songs. Sung in pidgin English, the songs were critical of the Cameroonian government. Lampira became the voice of the voiceless.
For us, Lampira was a committed artist. He strived to change society.
This is a huge loss for Cameroon, especially since he was politically committed, because committed artists are rare in this country.
Lampira was arrested during the food riots of February 2008. A Cameroonian court concluded that he incited young people to commit acts of violence. He was sentenced to 3 years behind bars. After his release, Lampira went into exile with his wife and their 5 children. They left for the United States, where he produced a new album. His political demands became harder still as he called on President Paul Biya to step down. The singer held the Cameroonian president responsible for several crimes.
And that wraps up African News for me. I'll be back with more tomorrow. Take care.